The knife went in at 2 a.m. 8 inches of cold steel through my shoulder, pinning me to the kitchen floor in a spreading pool of blood. I looked up at my mother standing in the doorway, and you know what she said? "Stop being so dramatic, Audrey. It was an accident." That's when I knew. My family wasn't going to save me. They were going to bury me. My name is Audrey Vance, and this is the story of how I took them down instead. If you've ever been the black sheep, the scapegoat, the one everyone calls crazy for telling the truth, hit that like button right now. Subscribe because this story gets wild. And drop a comment if you've ever been gaslit by your own family. You're not alone. I promise you I've been there. Now let me take you back to where it all started. 3 years before that knife. 3 years before I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones you need to fear. 3 years ago, I was living what most people would call a double life, though I never saw it that way. By day, I was a senior analyst at a high-level intelligence agency, the kind of place where my security clearance was higher than most people's credit scores. I spent my mornings analyzing threat assessments that could mean the difference between hundreds of lives saved or lost. My colleagues respected me. My supervisors trusted my judgment. I had access to classified information that would make most people's heads spin. In that world, my voice mattered. My opinions shaped policy. My instincts saved operations. Let me paint you a clearer picture of what my work actually entailed. I worked on the 4th floor of a nondescript building in McLean, Virginia, in a division that officially didn't exist on any organizational chart. My team analyzed patterns in global communications, looking for signatures of emerging threats before they materialized into attacks. We weren't the people kicking down doors or running covert operations. We were the ones who told those people where to go and what to look for. I had spent 6 years building my reputation in that world. I had started as a junior analyst fresh out of grad school, assigned to a desk in the corner doing grunt work, compiling reports that senior analysts would use to brief Congress. But I was good at seeing patterns where others saw noise. I was good at connecting dots that seemed unrelated. Within 2 years, I was leading briefings. Within 4, I was running my own team of analysts. Within 6, I had a top-secret SCI clearance and was working cases that made my pulse race every single day. My team was small but formidable. There was Marcus, a former NSA cryptologist who could break code in his sleep. Sarah, who had worked counterterrorism for a decade and could predict attack patterns with eerie accuracy. James, fresh from MIT with a PhD in data science and an ability to build algorithms that could sift through terabytes of information in hours. And me, the one who synthesized all their work into actionable intelligence. We had stopped 3 potential attacks in the previous year alone, not big splashy ones that made the news. The kind that never happened because we caught them early, disrupted the network's fed information to field teams who made quiet arrests in the middle of the night. That was the nature of our work. Success meant nothing happened. Success was invisible. But the moment I stepped through the door of my childhood home in suburban Virginia, I became someone else entirely. The invisible daughter, the troublemaker, the dramatic one who always made mountains out of molehills. My mother, Eleanor, had spent the last 15 years perfecting the image of our blended family. From the outside, we looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. The pristine colonial house with the manicured lawn, the family photos in matching outfits that lined the hallway, the carefully curated social media posts about our Sunday dinners. Everything had to be perfect, and I was the one imperfection she couldn't edit out. Eleanor had been a real estate agent when she met my father, a quiet man who worked in IT, and died of a sudden heart attack when I was 11. I still remembered him clearly. He used to take me to the Smithsonian on Saturdays, let me ask a million questions about every exhibit, never once told me I was being too much. When he died, something in Eleanor broke, though I didn't understand it at the time. She became obsessed with control, with image, with making sure everything looked right from the outside. My stepfather, Robert, had married my mother when I was 12, bringing with him his son, Rick, who was 3 years older than me. Robert was a financial advisor at a mid-sized firm, the kind of man who wore polo shirts on weekends and talked about golf handicaps. He was the epitome of suburban normalcy, and that was exactly what Eleanor wanted. A do-over. a chance to build the perfect family she thought she deserved. Robert was the kind of man who nodded and agreed with whatever Eleanor said, a human yes man who had mastered the art of conflict avoidance to the point of cowardice. I used to think he was just easygoing, but as I got older, I realized it was something else. It was weakness, an inability to take a stand on anything that might create waves. He would watch Eleanor steamroll over people over me and say nothing, just nod and retreat to his study to review financial portfolios. But it was Rick who became the golden child, the center of Eleanor's universe, the son she had always wanted. Never mind that he had dropped out of college twice. Never mind that he bounced from job to job, never keeping one for more than 6 months. Never mind that he spent his weekends gambling away money he didn't have, and his weeknights drinking with friends who were equally directionless. Rick had dropped out of Penn State his freshman year, claiming the professors didn't understand his business ideas. Eleanor had supported him, said he was too creative for traditional education. He came home and enrolled at community college, dropped out again within a semester. Then he tried a coding boot camp that promised to turn him into a 6-figure software developer in 3 months. He quit after 2 weeks, said the instructor was incompetent. Each failure was met with Eleanor's unwavering support and a new round of excuses. Rick wasn't lazy, he was selective. He wasn't irresponsible, he was entrepreneurial. He wasn't unemployed, he was between ventures. The mental gymnastics she performed to protect his ego were Olympic level. Eleanor saw only what she wanted to see. Rick was charming when he needed to be. He knew exactly how to play the role of the devoted son, showing up for family dinners with flowers for Eleanor, complimenting her cooking, telling her how beautiful she looked. And she ate it up every single time, blind to the reality that was obvious to everyone else. Rick was a 32-year-old man-child who had never held himself accountable for anything in his entire life. Meanwhile, I had graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown, earned a master's degree in international relations from Johns Hopkins, and worked my way up through one of the most competitive intelligence agencies in the world. But at family dinners, when Eleanor asked about our weeks, she would spend 45 minutes listening to Rick talk about his latest get-rich-quick scheme while giving me exactly 3 minutes to mention my work before she changed the subject. And I wasn't allowed to go into details anyway. My job was classified, which gave her the perfect excuse to dismiss it entirely. The pattern was exhausting. Every Sunday, I would drive from my apartment in Arlington to the house in McLean for dinner. Every Sunday, I would tell myself this would be the last time. And every Sunday, I would go back because some pathetic part of me still hoped that maybe this week would be different. Maybe this week, Eleanor would ask about my life with genuine interest. Maybe this week she would see me. She never did. The real trouble started about 8 months before that terrible night. It was a Saturday in January, and I had stopped by the house to drop off some paperwork Robert had asked me to review. He wanted a second opinion on an investment portfolio, and while finance wasn't my specialty, I had enough training in pattern recognition to spot red flags. I walked in through the kitchen door, expecting the house to be empty. Eleanor had mentioned she had an open house to host. Robert was supposed to be at a conference in Baltimore, but I heard voices coming from the den, low and urgent. I recognized Rick's voice immediately, and another man's voice I didn't know. I should have announced myself. I should have walked in and said hello. But years of training had taught me to observe before acting, so I stayed quiet, listening. Rick was saying something about needing more time, about having the money soon. The other man's voice was cold, flat professional. "You've been saying that for 3 months. Our mutual friends are getting impatient. They don't like waiting." I know, but I've got something big coming through next week. A property deal. My mom doesn't know about it yet, but once it closes, I'll have enough to cover everything I owe plus interest. Your mother? The other man laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're laundering money through your mother's real estate business that's either genius or incredibly stupid. She doesn't know anything about it. I've been handling some of her commercial properties, setting up the LLCs. The money flows through clean. No one's looking at small-time real estate transactions. My blood ran cold. I stayed frozen in the hallway, barely breathing. It better work, the other man said. Because if you don't have our money by the end of the month, we're going to have a serious problem. The kind of problem that doesn't go away with excuses. I'll have it, I swear. I heard footsteps approaching and quickly slipped into the bathroom, closing the door silently. Through the crack, I watched Rick escort a man in an expensive suit out through the front door. The man was probably in his 50s with the kind of face that had seen things you didn't want to imagine. Everything about him screamed organized crime. After they left, I stayed in the bathroom for 10 minutes, my mind racing. Rick wasn't just gambling, he wasn't just in debt. He was involved in money laundering, and he was using Eleanor's business to do it. My mother, who was obsessed with her reputation, who couldn't stand the thought of anyone thinking poorly of her family, had no idea she was being used as a front for criminal activity. I spent the next 2 weeks watching Rick carefully. I started showing up at the house at odd times, claiming I had free time and wanted to visit. Eleanor was thrilled. She thought I was finally making an effort to be part of the family. She had no idea I was conducting surveillance. I noticed things. Rick's new watch, an expensive Rolex that probably cost $30,000. The luxury SUV he was driving, leased under one of Eleanor's LLC names. The way he would disappear for hours at a time, always with vague explanations about meeting with potential business partners. I pulled some records using methods I probably shouldn't have outside of official channels. I found a web of shell companies all tied back to properties Eleanor thought she was managing. Money was flowing through them in patterns I recognized from financial crimes training. Small amounts just under reporting thresholds, moving in and out in ways designed to obscure the source. Rick was laundering money for someone, probably multiple someones, and he was doing it through our mother's business. If anyone ever looked closely, Eleanor would be the one holding the bag. She would be the one facing federal charges. Rick had set it up perfectly to protect himself. I had to tell her. There was no question about that. Whatever our relationship was, whatever complicated feelings I had about my mother, I couldn't let her walk into a federal investigation blind. I waited until a Tuesday afternoon when I knew Rick would be out. I called Eleanor and asked if I could stop by to talk. She sounded pleased, probably thinking I wanted to discuss wedding plans or babies or whatever she thought 30-year-old daughters were supposed to talk about with their mothers. I arrived at the house with a folder full of documents I had compiled, bank statements I had found in the recycling bin during my visits, LLC formation documents I had accessed through public records, a printout of the web of companies and their connections, everything laid out in a way that even someone without my training could understand. Eleanor made tea, chattering about her latest open house, about how well Rick was doing with his new consulting business. I waited until we were sitting in the living room teacups on the coffee table before I opened the folder. "Mom, I need to talk to you about Rick." Her smile faded slightly. "What about Rick?" "He's involved in something illegal, money laundering, and he's using your business to do it." I watched her face carefully. First confusion, then dismissal, then anger. "Audrey, that's a very serious accusation." "I know. That's why I've spent 2 weeks confirming it before I came to you." I spread the documents on the table. "Look at this. These are LLCs registered under your business name. Do you recognize them?" Eleanor glanced at the papers, her lips pressed thin. "Rick helps me with the commercial properties. He's been wonderful about handling the administrative work." "Has he told you about the money flowing through these accounts?" I pulled out the bank statements. "Look at these deposits. 15,000 here, 12,000 there, 19,000. Always just under the 20,000 reporting threshold. That's called structuring, and it's illegal." "I don't understand what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you directly. Rick is using your business to launder money for criminals. If the FBI ever investigates, you're the one whose name is on everything. You're the one who will face charges." Eleanor set down her teacup with a sharp click. "This is ridiculous. Rick wouldn't do that." "Mom, I overheard him. I heard him talking to someone about it. And I've verified the financial records. This isn't speculation." "You were spying on him." Her voice rose. "You were sneaking around my house, eavesdropping on private conversations." "I was protecting you." "No." Eleanor stood up, her hands shaking. "No, you're doing what you always do. You're trying to make Rick look bad because you're jealous. You can't stand that I love him, that I'm proud of him. So you invent these conspiracy theories." I stayed seated, keeping my voice calm. These aren't theories. These are facts. Look at the documents. I've looked at them and I see paperwork that you could have fabricated. You work in intelligence, don't you? You probably have all sorts of ways to make things look suspicious when they're perfectly innocent. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. You think I'm making this up. I think you have issues with Rick that you need to work through. Maybe you should see a therapist about this obsession. Mom, please, just listen to me. Rick is in over his head with dangerous people. I heard one of them threaten him. If he doesn't pay them back, they're going to hurt him. And when this all comes crashing down, you're going to be caught in it. Eleanor gathered the papers and shoved them back into the folder. I want you to leave, and I don't want you bringing this up again. Rick is family. Family protects each other. They don't tear each other down with paranoid fantasies. This isn't paranoia. This is reality. Get out, Audrey, and don't come back until you're ready to apologize to Rick and to me. I stood, taking the folder with me. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to destroy this family because you've never felt like you belonged. Well, I'm sorry your father died, but that doesn't give you the right to poison everyone else's happiness. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw something I had been avoiding for years. She didn't want to know the truth. She couldn't afford to know it. Her entire identity was wrapped up in this perfect family image, and admitting that Rick was a criminal would shatter that illusion. So she chose the illusion. She chose Rick. She chose denial, and she chose to make me the villain. I left without another word. I drove back to my apartment in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on my couch staring at nothing. My phone rang an hour later. It was Robert. Audrey Eleanor told me what you said today. It's true, Robert. All of it. There was a long silence. I believe you. I sat up straighter. You do? I've suspected something was off for months. Rick's lifestyle doesn't match his income. I've seen some of the transactions through Eleanor's accounts. I just didn't want to look too closely. He paused. I'm a coward. I should have said something. You need to protect yourself. Get a lawyer. Separate your finances from Eleanor's. I can't do that. She'd see it as a betrayal. Robert, if Rick goes down, he's taking Eleanor with him. And if you're not careful, he'll take you too. I'll think about it. Another pause. I'm sorry, Audrey, for not standing up for you more, for letting Eleanor dismiss you the way she does. You deserve better. Thank you for saying that. Be careful. If Rick knows you're on to him, I don't know what he'll do. The call ended, and I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, Robert's warning echoing in my head. If Rick knows you're on to him. I had been so focused on protecting Eleanor that I hadn't thought about what Rick would do if he found out I was investigating him. The next day at work, I told Ben Carter everything. Ben was my direct supervisor, a former field agent who had transitioned to management after an injury in Eastern Europe left him with a permanent limp and a drawer full of medals he never talked about. He was in his late 40s, sharp as hell, and one of the few people I trusted completely. We met in a secure conference room, the kind with lead-lined walls and white noise generators that made eavesdropping impossible. I laid out everything I had discovered about Rick, the money laundering, the criminal connections, my mother's unwitting involvement. Ben listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face. Jesus, Vance, this is a mess. I know. You can't investigate your own family through official channels. That's a conflict of interest the size of Montana. I'm not asking to investigate him officially. I'm asking for advice on how to protect my mother. Your mother who just kicked you out of her house for trying to warn her. Yes. Ben sighed. The money laundering, if it's what you think it is, that's FBI territory. They'd need to be notified. But without your mother's cooperation, any investigation would be difficult. And if she's fighting to protect Rick, she could obstruct the whole thing. So what do? Document everything, keep records, and protect yourself. He pulled a secure phone from his desk drawer. I'm activating a duress protocol for you. If you ever feel unsafe if anything happens, you press this sequence and we come running with the full weight of the federal government behind us. Understand? I took the phone feeling the weight of it in my hand. You really think it could come to that? You're threatening someone's criminal enterprise. Yes, I think it could come to that. These people Rick is involved with, they don't mess around. And if he's desperate enough, if he feels cornered, people do stupid things. Rick's my stepbrother. He wouldn't actually hurt me. Ben fixed me with a look that made me remember he had seen things in his career that would give most people nightmares. Everyone's capable of violence when they feel threatened. Don't underestimate him just because he's family. Sometimes that makes it worse, not better. I activated the phone and slipped it into my bag. It felt melodramatic, like I was overreacting. But I also trusted Ben's judgment. If he thought I needed protection, I probably needed protection. The weeks that followed were tense. I stopped going to Sunday dinners. Eleanor didn't call to ask why. She was clearly freezing me out, and Rick, no doubt thrilled that I had been expelled from the family circle, was probably celebrating. But I kept watching. I couldn't help myself. I would drive past the house sometimes on my way home from work, just checking to see if anything looked off. I monitored the LLC accounts as much as I could from public records. I waited for the other shoe to drop. It happened on a Wednesday in March. I was in a briefing presenting intelligence on a suspected weapons trafficking network when my personal phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, Marcus slid a note across the table. Check your phone. Multiple calls from same number. I glanced at the screen. 7 missed calls from Robert. I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Robert answered on the first ring. Audrey, thank God. Eleanor's been arrested. Everything else fell away. What? FBI agents showed up at the house this morning. They had a warrant. They searched everything, took her computer files, records. Then they arrested her. Something about money laundering and conspiracy. She's at the federal courthouse now. Rick is nowhere to be found. Where are you? Home. They questioned me for 2 hours. I gave them access to everything, told them I didn't know anything about Eleanor's business dealings. I think they believed me, but Jesus Christ, Audrey, what's happening? Rick happened. I told you this was coming. I was already walking toward the elevator. Get a lawyer. Don't talk to anyone without one present. And Robert, don't lie for Eleanor. Don't try to protect her. Tell the truth or you're going to go down with her. She's my wife. And she chose to ignore the truth when it could have saved her. You don't owe her your freedom. I ended the call and immediately dialed the FBI field office in Washington. I asked for the agent in charge of the Eleanor Harrington case and was transferred 3 times before I got someone who would talk to me. This is Special Agent Williams. You have information about the Harrington case. My name is Audrey Vance. Eleanor Harrington is my mother. I work as a senior analyst at an intelligence agency with TS/SCI clearance. 8 months ago, I discovered evidence that my stepbrother Rick Harrington was using my mother's real estate business to launder money. I attempted to warn her. She refused to listen and cut off contact with me. I have documentation of everything I found. There was a pause. Can you come in this afternoon? I'll be there in 30 minutes. I spent 3 hours at the FBI field office walking Special Agent Williams and her partner through everything I had discovered. I handed over copies of all my documentation. I explained the timeline, the conversations I had overheard, my mother's refusal to acknowledge the evidence. Agent Williams was a woman in her early 40s with short blonde hair and the kind of eyes that saw through bullshit instantly. Why didn't you report this 8 months ago? I was trying to protect my mother. I thought if I could convince her to distance herself from Rick, to clean up the business accounts, she could avoid prosecution. I didn't realize how deep she was in. Is she involved in the laundering, or is she just a pawn? I honestly don't know. I think she started out as an unwitting participant, but once I told her about it, her refusal to investigate or cooperate made her complicit. She chose not to know. And Rick. He's the one running everything. He set it up, he manages the accounts, he has the criminal connections. My mother just provided the legitimate business front. Agent Williams made notes. Rick Harrington hasn't been located yet. We have agents looking for him. Do you have any idea where he might be? No. But he gambles in Atlantic City regularly. He has friends there. We'll follow up on that. She closed her folder. Ms. Vance, I want to be straight with you. Your mother is in serious trouble. The evidence we've gathered indicates she knowingly participated in money laundering activities. She may not have initiated it, but she benefited from it and took steps to conceal it. That makes her a co-conspirator. I understand. Given your security clearance and your employment, I need to ask, have you shared any classified information with your family? No, absolutely not. No discussions about your work, your cases, nothing that could be construed as a security breach. My family barely knows what agency I work for. My mother dismissed my career as glorified filing. I never discussed anything substantive with any of them. Agent Williams nodded. Good. Because if Rick is involved with organized crime and you're in intelligence, that would raise serious security concerns. The implication hit me cold. Rick could have tried to use me to get information. He could have been cultivating our family connection to gain access to intelligence. I had never considered that angle because I had never told him anything, but the fact that it was even a possibility made me feel sick. I need you to be extremely careful, Agent Williams continued. If Rick finds out you've been cooperating with us, you could be at risk. These aren't petty criminals. The organization he's been laundering for has connections to serious players. I've taken precautions. Good. Keep them up. And if Rick tries to contact you, you call me immediately. Don't engage with him. I left the FBI office as the sun was setting. My phone had 7 new messages from Eleanor's number, all of them from her lawyer requesting that I call urgently. I deleted them without listening. Eleanor had made her choice. She had chosen Rick over me, chosen willful ignorance over truth, chosen her perfect family image over reality. Now she was facing the consequences, and I felt no obligation to save her from them. But despite everything, some part of me felt guilty. She was still my mother. Flawed, narcissistic, incapable of seeing me clearly, but still my mother. And she was sitting in a federal holding cell because she had been too proud and too blind to listen when I tried to warn her. The guilt didn't last long. That night I got a text from an unknown number. You just couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you? You destroyed this family. I hope you're proud of yourself. Rick. I forwarded the message to Agent Williams and blocked the number. But more texts came from different numbers. All of them from Rick, all of them angry and accusatory. Mom could go to prison because of you. You're so desperate for attention that you had to invent a crisis. You've always been jealous. This is what happens when you let envy control you. I blocked each number as it came in, but they kept coming. Rick had clearly bought a stack of burner phones and was working his way through them. By midnight, I had received 37 messages. The last one was different. You think you're safe because you're hiding behind the FBI? You're not. I know where you live. I know where you work. You should have stayed out of my business, Audrey. Now you're going to regret it. I called Agent Williams. She didn't answer, so I left a voicemail detailing the threats. Then I called Ben. He answered immediately. Vance, what's wrong? I told him about the texts, about the escalating threats. I don't think he'll actually do anything, but I wanted you to know. You're coming to a safe house. Tonight. Pack a bag. Ben, that's excessive. Your stepbrother is a cornered criminal who's threatening a federal employee. That's not excessive, that's protocol. Pack a bag. I'll have a team at your place in 20 minutes. I didn't argue. I packed quickly, throwing clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag. My gun went into its holster. The secure phone Ben had given me went into my pocket. I was ready when the knock came. 2 agents I didn't recognize escorted me to an unmarked SUV and drove me to a safe house in Alexandria. It was a nondescript townhouse in a row of identical units, the kind of place no one would look at twice. Inside, it was sparsely furnished but secure with reinforced doors and a panic room in the basement. You'll stay here until Rick is apprehended, one of the agents said. We'll have someone posted outside at all times. I stayed in that safe house for 3 days. I worked remotely video calling into meetings, reviewing reports on my encrypted laptop. At night, I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, listening to every sound my hand close to my gun. On the 3rd day, Agent Williams called. We've located Rick. He's in Atlantic City. We're coordinating with local PD to bring him in. Within the hour, I'll keep you updated. 2 hours later, she called again. Rick's in custody. He resisted arrest, tried to run. We had to tackle him in a casino parking lot. He's being transported back to Virginia now. I felt something in my chest unclench. Is my mother still in custody? She made bail. Her lawyer got her out yesterday. Has she tried to contact me? Not through official channels. But Audrey, you should know. When we arrested Rick, he tried to make a deal. He said he would provide information about larger operations if we dropped the charges. Did you take it? No, we already have everything we need to prosecute him, and the information he was offering wasn't valuable enough to justify the deal. But he also said something else. He claimed you were the one who introduced him to the people he was laundering for, that you used your intelligence connections to set up the whole operation. I felt cold spread through me. That's a lie. We know. We've verified your alibi for the times he's claiming these meetings happened. You were either at work or can be placed elsewhere. It's obvious he's trying to deflect blame, but it shows how desperate he is. He's willing to destroy you to save himself. What happens now? He'll be arraigned tomorrow. Given the flight risk and the threats he made against you, we're recommending no bail. He'll stay in custody until trial. Good. You can go home now. We'll keep a patrol in your neighborhood for the next few weeks just as a precaution, but with Rick in custody, the immediate threat is over. I went home that night, back to my own apartment, my own bed. Everything looked the same, but I felt different. I felt like I was seeing my life from the outside, recognizing how close I had come to something terrible. I slept for 12 hours straight, a deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke up, I had 17 missed calls, 3 from Eleanor, 14 from numbers I didn't recognize. I listened to Eleanor's voicemails on speaker while I made coffee. The first one, Audrey, it's your mother. I need to talk to you. Please call me back. The second one, Audrey, I know you're angry, but this is important. Rick is in jail because of you. You need to fix this. Call the FBI and tell them you made a mistake. The third one, fine, don't call me back. But when this family falls apart completely, remember that you're the one who destroyed it. You and your paranoid delusions. I deleted all 3 messages and blocked her number. I thought that would be the end of it. Rick in jail, Eleanor facing her own charges, me finally free of the toxic dynamic that had defined my family for 15 years. I thought I could move forward, focus on my work, build a life that wasn't constantly overshadowed by their dysfunction. I should have known better. 4 months passed. Rick remained in custody, his bail denied 3 times. Eleanor's lawyer managed to negotiate a plea deal for her house arrest and probation in exchange for testimony against Rick and cooperation with the FBI's investigation into the larger money laundering network. Robert quietly filed for divorce and moved into an apartment in Bethesda. I stopped thinking about them. I threw myself into my work. My team closed 2 major cases and I was up for a promotion. Life was moving forward. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday in September, unseasonably hot for the time of year. I had been working late on a threat assessment, trying to finish before the weekend. By the time I left the office, it was almost midnight. I should have gone back to my apartment, but for some reason I can't quite explain, I drove to the old house in McLean instead. Maybe I was feeling nostalgic. Maybe I wanted to see the place one more time before it was sold to pay Eleanor's legal fees. Maybe I was being stupid, probably all 3. The house looked abandoned even though Eleanor was technically still living there. The lawn was overgrown. The shutters needed painting. The family image had cracked and she had stopped bothering to maintain the facade. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the dark windows, remembering what it had been like to grow up there. The good memories were distant and faint, like photographs left in the sun too long. Mostly, I remembered feeling invisible, feeling like I was constantly performing for an audience that would never applaud. I was about to leave when I saw movement near the side door. A figure, tall and broad-shouldered, trying to force the lock. My first thought was burglar, and I reached for my phone to call the police. Then the figure turned slightly, and the streetlight caught his face. Rick. My heart stopped. Rick was supposed to be in federal custody. He was supposed to be awaiting trial. He was not supposed to be breaking into Eleanor's house at 1 a.m. I watched as he got the door open and slipped inside. Every instinct screamed at me to drive away, to call the police, to do anything except what I did next. I got out of the car. I told myself I needed to see what he was doing. I told myself I needed to make sure Eleanor was okay. I told myself a lot of things that sounded reasonable. But the truth was simpler and stupider. I was angry. I was tired of running, and I wanted answers. I approached the house quietly, my hand on the gun at my hip. The side door was still ajar. I pushed it open slowly, listening. I heard sounds from upstairs, drawers opening and closing. Rick was searching for something. I should have stayed downstairs. I should have waited for backup. I should have done a lot of things differently. But I had spent my entire career analyzing threats and making decisions in high-pressure situations, and in that moment, I made the worst decision of my life. I went upstairs. Rick was in Eleanor's bedroom tearing through her closet. He was wearing street clothes, not a prison uniform, and his face was desperate wild. "How did you get out?" My voice was steady, controlled. He spun around, and I saw the moment he recognized me. First shock, then anger, then something darker. Something that made my hand move toward my gun. "Audrey, of course it's you. Of course you'd be here. How did you get out of jail, Rick?" He laughed a harsh sound. "I didn't. I convinced a guard I needed emergency medical treatment. Faked a seizure. On the way to the hospital, I overpowered the transport officer and ran. I've been hiding out for 2 days, but I need money to get out of the country. Mom's got cash hidden here somewhere. She always does. You assaulted a federal officer. I didn't have a choice. You destroyed my life. Everything was fine until you started poking around making accusations, turning Mom against me. I didn't turn Eleanor against you. I told her the truth. You were using her business to launder money for criminals. And she would have been fine. No one was looking at her until you went to the FBI. You did this, Audrey, all of it." He moved closer, and I saw he was holding something in his hand. At first, I thought it was a phone. Then I realized it was a taser. "You're going to help me," Rick said. "You're going to tell me where Mom keeps her cash, and then you're going to give me your car keys and your phone, and you're not going to follow me or report me for at least 6 hours. That'll give me enough time to get across the border." "I'm not helping you, Rick." "Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to tase you until you tell me. And I really don't want to hurt you, Audrey. We're family." I almost laughed. "We were never family. You were Eleanor's golden child. I was the disappointment she couldn't fix. Family would have meant treating each other with respect. Family would have meant listening when someone tried to warn you about danger. We were never that. So philosophical." He activated the taser, the electricity crackling between the prongs. "Keys, phone, cash location, now." My hand had been inching toward my gun the entire conversation. In training, they taught us about that critical moment when talk fails and action becomes necessary. I saw it approaching, saw Rick's finger tightening on the taser trigger, saw the desperation in his eyes morph into violence. But I wasn't fast enough. Rick was closer than I thought. He lunged forward, the taser aimed at my chest. I twisted, trying to dodge, and the prongs caught my shoulder instead of my torso. 50,000 volts of electricity slammed through me, every muscle seizing my vision, whiting out. I went down hard, hitting the floor, my gun falling from my hand. Through the haze of pain, I heard Rick scrambling. He was going for my gun. "No!" I forced my body to move, rolling away from him, gasping. My shoulder was screaming in pain. My muscles weren't responding right, but I had been through pain before. I had been through worse. I kicked out, blindly connected with something. Rick cursed. I rolled again, putting distance between us, trying to clear my vision. Then I heard a voice from downstairs. Eleanor's voice, sharp and frightened. "Who's there? I've called the police." She hadn't. I could hear it in her tone. She was bluffing. Rick heard it too. He stopped going for my gun and ran instead, pushing past me, thundering down the stairs. I heard Eleanor scream, heard the sound of a scuffle. Then the side door slamming open. I forced myself to my feet, every movement agony. I staggered to the stairs, leaned on the railing, made my way down. Eleanor was in the living room, standing in her bathrobe, staring at the open door. When she saw me, her face went pale. "Audrey, what are you doing here? Was that Rick?" "He escaped custody. He came looking for cash. You need to call 911 right now." "Is he coming back?" I don't know. Call 911? She didn't move. She just stood there staring at me. You're bleeding. I looked down. My shoulder was bleeding where the taser prongs had caught me. Not badly, but enough to be concerning. The taser must have broken the skin. It's fine. Eleanor, call the police. Why were you here? Her voice was odd, distant. Why did you come to the house? I saw Rick breaking in. I came to stop him. You came to stop him? She repeated it like the words didn't make sense. After everything you've done after destroying his life, you came to stop him from getting money to escape? I stared at my mother. You understand he just escaped from federal custody, right? He tasered me. He was going to hurt me to get what he wanted. Because you've left him no choice. You went to the FBI, you testified against him, you made sure he couldn't make bail. You've systematically destroyed any chance he had at a future. He destroyed his own future when he decided to launder money for criminals. He made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But instead of helping him, instead of protecting your family, you turned him in. You're supposed to be his sister. I'm not his sister. I never was. And I did try to protect this family. I came to you 8 months ago with evidence and you kicked me out of the house. You called me paranoid. You chose to protect Rick instead of listening to the truth. Eleanor's face was turning red, her hands shaking. Because Rick is my son, he needed me. And yes, maybe I should have listened to you, but that doesn't give you the right to destroy him completely. You could have handled this privately. You could have helped him get out of the situation. Instead, you went nuclear. There was no handling this privately. He was committing federal crimes, multiple felonies, and when I tried to warn you, you threw me out. So this is revenge. This is you punishing me for not choosing you. The accusation was so absurd, so disconnected from reality that I didn't know how to respond. I stood there bleeding from my shoulder, having just been assaulted by her criminal stepson, and she was making it about her feelings. Call the police, I said quietly. Rick is dangerous and he's still out there. Call them now. Eleanor didn't move toward the phone. She just kept staring at me with something like hatred in her eyes. So I called them myself. The police arrived in 4 minutes, FBI in 10. By then, Rick was long gone. They put out an alert, started a manhunt. Agent Williams showed up and took my statement while a paramedic treated the taser wounds on my shoulder. Eleanor gave her own statement, and I heard her telling the police that Rick was confused, that he didn't mean any harm, that this was all a misunderstanding. Even after everything, she was still protecting him. Agent Williams pulled me aside when we were done. You need to be more careful. Coming here alone was reckless. I know. Rick is desperate now. He's facing decades in prison. He has nothing to lose. That makes him incredibly dangerous. I want you back in protective custody. I can't live in a safe house indefinitely. Then you need to be vigilant. Vary your routine. Stay aware of your surroundings. And for God's sake, don't go investigating things alone. I went back to my apartment that night with an agent escort. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with my gun on the coffee table waiting for dawn. Rick was caught 3 days later trying to cross into Mexico. He put up a fight, broke a Border Patrol agent's nose before they finally got him in handcuffs. They added assaulting a federal officer and escape charges to his growing list. This time, there would be no bail, no second chances. Rick was going to prison for a very long time. Eleanor called me the day after Rick's recapture. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Audrey, I need you to do something for me. I need you to talk to the FBI, tell them to drop the escape charges. Rick was confused. He didn't know what he was doing. He needs treatment, not more prison time. You owe me this. After everything you've put this family through, you owe me. I listened to the message twice just to make sure I had heard it correctly. Then I deleted it and blocked her number. Again. The trial was set for 3 months later. In the meantime, Rick remained in maximum security. I went back to my normal life, or as normal as it could be given that I was scheduled to testify against my stepbrother in federal court. My team at work was incredibly supportive. Marcus brought me coffee without being asked. Sarah made sure I wasn't working alone late at night. James set up additional security protocols on my home computer. Ben checked in on me daily. You doing okay, Vance? He asked one afternoon, dropping into the chair across from my desk. I'm fine. That's not what I asked. I looked up from the report I was reading. I'm dealing with it. Your family tried to kill you. Twice, if you count the taser. That's not something you just deal with. My stepbrother tried to hurt me. My family has been killing me slowly for years. This was just more direct. Ben was quiet for a moment. You know you can take time off, right? Personal leave. See a therapist. Process this. I've been seeing a therapist for 3 months. She's helpful, but sitting around thinking about it won't make it better. Working helps. Working is avoidance. Working is survival. It's what I know how to do. He studied me for a long moment. Okay, but promise me something. After the trial, when this is all over, you'll take a real vacation. Go somewhere, clear your head. You've been running on empty for too long. I promise. The trial began on a cold November morning. The federal courthouse was an imposing building, all stone and glass and the weight of justice. I arrived early with Sofia Rodriguez, the prosecutor assigned to the case. She was sharp, efficient, and had absolutely no patience for the defense's attempts to paint Rick as a victim. They're going to try to make you look vindictive, Sofia warned me as we walked through security. They'll suggest you had a grudge against Rick, that you're exaggerating or lying to get revenge. Don't let them rattle you. Just tell the truth, calmly and clearly. I can do that? The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Rick sat at the defense table in a suit that was probably expensive once, but looked worn now. His lawyer, Marcus Brennan, was already arranging documents and looking confident. Eleanor and Robert were in the gallery. Eleanor looked smaller, somehow diminished. Robert looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When Eleanor saw me, her face hardened into an expression I didn't recognize. The trial lasted a week. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Financial records, testimony from FBI agents, evidence of the money laundering network, Rick's text messages with criminals, the whole sordid story laid out in excruciating detail. Then it was my turn to testify. Sofia led me through my testimony carefully. How I had discovered Rick's criminal activities, how I had tried to warn Eleanor, how Rick had threatened me, how he had escaped custody and attacked me with a taser. And when Rick tasered you, Sofia asked, what did you think was going to happen next? I thought he was going to kill me, I said honestly. He was desperate. He blamed me for his situation, and he had nothing left to lose. Yes, I thought I was going to die. Brennan's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint me as jealous, as vindictive as someone who had manufactured evidence to destroy her stepbrother. He suggested I had provoked Rick's attack, that I had gone to the house that night looking for a confrontation. Isn't it true, Ms. Vance, that you've always resented Rick, that you couldn't stand that your mother loved him? My mother's feelings about Rick are irrelevant to the fact that he committed multiple felonies. But you were jealous, weren't you? Jealous that Rick received more attention, more affection. I was frustrated that my mother refused to see reality. That's not jealousy. That's exasperation at willful blindness. You work in intelligence, correct? You're trained in manipulation and how to build cases, how to make evidence look convincing. I'm trained in analysis, in finding truth in data. I'm also trained in integrity and in respecting the law, neither of which Rick demonstrated. Did you ever consider that by turning your stepbrother into the FBI, you were destroying your family? I looked at Brennan directly. I considered that by not turning him in, I would be complicit in his crimes and allowing my mother to face federal charges she didn't fully understand. I chose to protect her, even though she didn't want to be protected. If that destroyed our family, it's because our family was built on a foundation of lies. After my testimony, Eleanor took the stand for the defense. Brennan asked her about Rick's character, about me, about the family dynamics. Eleanor painted a picture of Rick as a troubled but good-hearted young man who had made mistakes, and of me as a cold, calculating woman who had never fit into the family. Audrey was always difficult, Eleanor said, always questioning everything, always making problems where there were none. She couldn't just be happy. She couldn't just accept that Rick and I were close. Sofia's cross-examination was brutal. Ms. Harrington, you pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit money laundering, didn't you? Yes, but I didn't know what was happening. You didn't know even after your daughter came to you with evidence and explicitly told you what Rick was doing. I thought she was exaggerating. So when presented with documented evidence of criminal activity, you chose not to investigate because you didn't want it to be true. I wanted to believe in my son, your stepson, who is not your biological son, but whom you've consistently protected at the expense of your biological daughter. I love them both. Do you? Because from the evidence, it seems like you love one of them significantly more. Enough to help cover up his crimes. Enough to try to discredit your daughter when she tried to help you. Enough to let him destroy your life and your reputation rather than hold him accountable. Eleanor had no answer for that. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, their verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts: money laundering, conspiracy, assault on a federal officer, escape from custody, assault during escape. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Rick got 23 years in federal prison. With good behavior, he might get out in 18. By the time he was released, he would be in his 50s, his entire adult life spent behind bars. Eleanor and Robert's plea deal meant they avoided prison time. Eleanor got 5 years of probation house arrest for the first year and a fine that would bankrupt her. Robert, who had genuinely been kept in the dark, got 2 years of probation and community service. But the real punishment for Eleanor was the destruction of everything she had built. Her real estate business collapsed. Her friends stopped calling. Her reputation was destroyed. The perfect family image she had spent 15 years crafting was revealed as a lie, and everyone knew it. I felt no joy in their suffering, but I felt no guilt either. 1 year after that terrible night, I stood in a different federal building, this time for a very different reason. I had been promoted to team lead of a new unit focused on insider threats and domestic extremism. It was challenging work, important work, and I was good at it. My team respected me, my opinions mattered, and most importantly, I was surrounded by people who valued truth over appearance, who understood that loyalty meant speaking up, not staying silent. I had a small apartment in Arlington now, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The walls were decorated with photos of me and my teammates, with Ben and Sophia, with the new friends I had made through a trauma support group for federal employees. These were my people now, my chosen family. The physical scar on my shoulder had faded to a thin white line. I could feel it when I moved certain ways, a reminder of that night. But I didn't see it as a mark of victimhood anymore. It was evidence of survival, proof that I had faced the worst and come through it. Eleanor sent me an email every few months, long, rambling messages full of self-pity and half-apologies. I was trying to protect my family. You didn't give me a choice. Rick didn't mean to hurt you. I read the first few, then stopped. There was nothing in them I needed. No real accountability, no genuine remorse. Just more of the same deflection and blame shifting I had dealt with my entire life. I deleted them without responding. Robert tried to reach out once through Ben. He wanted to meet, to explain, to apologize. I declined. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes. Rick would be eligible for parole in 15 years. I had already submitted a statement for his parole hearing, whenever it might be. It was short and to the point. He attacked me twice and showed no remorse. He has demonstrated a pattern of violence, criminal behavior, and refusal to take responsibility. I do not feel safe with him free in society, and I request that the parole board deny any early release. I would update that statement every year if I needed to, but mostly I didn't think about them anymore. They had taken up too much space in my life already. Now I focused on my work, on my real relationships, on building a life that was authentic and honest. A life where speaking the truth was valued, not punished, where being right was more important than keeping up appearances. I learned that justice doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sometimes it's not about dramatic confrontations or tearful reconciliations. Sometimes it's simply about standing firm, speaking truth, and refusing to let anyone rewrite your reality. Sometimes the victory is just in surviving and moving forward. They tried to tell me I was dramatic. They tried to tell me I was paranoid. They tried to silence me with shame and guilt and the weight of family obligation. But when that knife went into my shoulder, it cut through more than flesh. It cut through every lie I had been telling myself about loyalty and love and what family was supposed to mean. And on the other side of that cut, I found myself, the real me. Strong, clear-sighted, and finally free. Truth doesn't care about perfect family portraits. It doesn't care about keeping up appearances. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to lie. Have you ever had to choose between speaking your truth and keeping the peace? Have you ever been called dramatic for standing up for yourself? Drop a comment below and let me know your story. And if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me keep sharing stories that matter. Remember, your voice is valid, your truth is important, and you deserve to be heard.